This is the lesson plan for A2 Elementary Cambridge Empower Unit-1A from page 9 to 11. The students are going to do some listening and reading activities from which we aim to conduct grammar lesson of present simple, verb to be, positive and negative, and vocabularies about countries and nationalities. The lesson should last about an hour, depending on your students and their levels. At the end of the lesson, they should be able to 1. Understand a conversation about people's countries and nationalities. 2. Use present simple, positive and negative forms of verb be. And 3. Ask for and give simple personal information about other people. Show the picture from page 9 and ask the questions. Here, there are different ways to conduct lead-in depending on the level of your students or how long you want the speaking activity to go on. If you want a standard lead-in for, let's say, 2 to 3 minutes, ask students to look at the picture and you ask the questions from exercise A. Don't let them read the questions. Then, put the students in pairs or groups to discuss the question from exercise B for a minute or two. This part of the lesson can be treated as a second lead-in, a quick speaking activity, or vocabulary pre-teaching for the listening. Or you may decide to leave the previous part out according to your individual classroom needs and circumstances. Once they finish the exercise, ask them to cross-check their answers with other pairs or groups, and then do classroom feedback on the exercise before you confirm the answers. Ask the students to listen to the words and repeat together, classroom drilling, and go around the classroom and ask students to say the word individually, individual drilling. Because the student's level being A2, if you are using English as your main instruction language, please be very simple and clear with your instructions and use a lot of pictures and body language. For example, when you put the students into pairs, please refer to them by their name. Look at students when you speak to them and use body language when you tell them they are going to work together. Ask students, "What's the World Cup?" and elicit possible answers. Please remember, students need a lot of encouragement and praise at this level. While eliciting, pay attention or check if they understand the word team by using it in a discussion. You may have to pre-teach the word. Tell them they are going to hear two people, a male and a female. I would normally use a picture on my PowerPoint or whiteboard, even draw them. I do think it helps students to paint the picture in their head, which will make it easier for them to understand the instruction and listening. Listening for specific information. Go through the conversation with students. Ask them to listen to the audio again and complete the gaps. Because this is a practice lesson, students should be able to listen as many times as they need, but don't overdo it though. Always go with the majority. Then ask students to compare their answers in pairs. Once they finish, check answers as a class. When checking answers, make sure to ask students, "How do you spell the answer?" and write the correct answers on the board. You may use this exercise as a listening activity or speaking activity. If you're using it as a listening, you can ask students to work in pairs to read the sentences and decide if they are true or false, and listen to check their answers, or vice versa. I personally prefer it as a speaking activity since it encourages students to recall the information from the audio during the conversation. Write Thomas's sentence on board. Ask students which word is for country and which for nationalities. You may need to explain what nationality means. Ask students the difference between two sentences. Here we are trying to bring students' attention to the word from and its association with country, but not nationality. Then we can move on to the next exercise and ask students to find more pairs of country and nationality from the box. As usual, they check answers with other students before you confirm the answers. Now moving on to pronunciation. Show students by counting on your fingers and breaking the words into chunks. How Russia has 2 syllables but Brazilian has 4. Point out the dividing line between syllables. Students read the other words in the box and count how many syllables there are in each. Play the recording again for students to underline the stressed syllable in each word. Practice as a class. We can do exercise 2, D for more practice. Complete the first sentence as a class and elicit another example using picture A from page 10. Students can work individually, writing sentences about the people in the pictures. They then check in pairs and check answers as a class. You can also ask students to write about themselves. Students may make mistakes with from. Either they drop it out completely or use it with both country and nationality. Do error correction accordingly. Play the next part of the conversation for students to answer the question. You may wish to pre-teach the word match. Check the answer as a class. Sometimes I find it helpful to let weaker students read and listen to the audio at the same time. You can provide them handout with transcript or tell them the page number if they have the book. However, you have to be careful with this method because they can become too dependent on the transcript. You can use the exercise B to elicit meaning. Since the lesson is about present simple verb to be, this step is quite simple. Do the exercise and we can move on to form. Read through sentences with the students and give them 1 minute to think about how to complete the rules. They can do this individually or in groups. The exercise C and D are basically your form for this grammar lesson. Additionally, it is best to go through all pronouns as well as subject and verb agreement. The best time to do pronunciation is when you do feedback on answers for exercise D. Here it is important to do some drilling for contractions of am, is, are, positive and negative. Encourage students to use contractions for speaking. Once we have sorted MFP for our grammar lesson, it is time for students to do some speaking activity. Here there are a few activities provided by the book. For me, this part is a bit confusing, and it can be too much for students to go through all of them. After the MFP, I would like to do one exercise in class to make sure students are okay with the grammar lesson, or in case if they have any questions. Then I can set them some homework for more practice. I would probably use exercise F to do in class and set grammar focus on page 137 as homework, and remind students if they have any doubt or problems, they can check grammar rules for B, positive, negative, on page 136. After I set homework, I will move on to the speaking activity, which I think is more appropriate to do in class. By encouraging them to use the language point they just studied, I hope students to improve fluency and confidence. At this point, classroom management is important. Monitor the class and listen to the students' errors to check if students are still having any issues with the language point studied. Another tip for this activity is to print Student A and Student B profile and provide some paper cards separately. This is the end of lesson plan for A2 Cambridge Empower Unit-1A. I hope you find it useful and any feedback are welcome. Please follow and like my channel for weekly lesson plan. Bye for now.